Hi folks, so as those of you who watch my channel know, I typically do new moon videos after a new moon, and the new moon in Capricorn is about 4 or 5 hours from when I'm recording this. It is now about, I think it's about 4 p.m. On the 12th of January Pacific time, and the new moon is at 9 p.m. tonight. 12th of January for me, Pacific time, 13th January for a number of people. It's a new moon in Capricorn. I'm going to say right off the bat that if this video gets cut off and I feel like I went far enough in it, I'm going to upload it because there's enough to say that I don't want to have to repeat it. And it's, as new moons go and as lunations go, we've had a few pleasant ones, but this particular new moon is a real tough one. And it has a severity that sort of, I'm not going to say that it puts it at the level of the eclipses, but it's a pretty severe and an intense new moon. Now, I'm going to do my standard thing as far as new moons are concerned. First, a new moon really gets a sign's season going. Typically, when we say something like Sagittarius season or Capricorn season, we're talking about the sun entering into the sign of Capricorn or Sagittarius, which it does roughly at the same time every year. We associate these signs and their presence with the sun's entry into these particular signs. So, you know, when someone says, what is your sign? They're really asking you, what is your sun sign? And Capricorn typically means about the 21st, 22nd of December to 21st, 22nd of January, give or take a day or two, depending on the year. Now, for me, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, which typically travel pretty close together, one by one enter a sign, sometimes, and sometime during that cycle, of course, while the sun is still in Capricorn, there's a new moon that occurs in that sign. And to me, the sun's entry and either Mercury and Venus's entry, or just one of those planets' entry, or not, depending on where they're placed with regard to whether they're before the full moon or after, before the new moon or after the new moon, it gets a particular sign percolating and moving. And indeed, a few days ago, I did a video on Venus' entry into Capricorn. And I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. So the sun comes in and subconsciously illuminates completely a sign, and more importantly, the house that sign occupies, every year around the same time. So where does Capricorn sit in your chart? Between December 20th, 21st, 22nd, and January 20th, 21st, 22nd, give or take a day or two, that part of your chart is illuminated subconsciously at this time every year. And there's a new moon, but within that month or so, at least one new moon, occasionally two new moons, in that sign every year around this time, with Venus and Mercury kind of hovering around, entering and exiting around this time as well. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus set up a conversation, and let's just say that they bring the pot to the boil. But when the new moon occurs, it ushers in a 4-week period where whatever it is that's been percolating subconsciously or consciously, with the Sun subconsciously, with Mercury much more consciously in terms of communication, with Venus in terms of typically opportunities or a certain amount of luck coming into the equation, or smoothing out of events coming into the equation, or a greening coming into the equation. All of that gets this part of the chart percolating, and then when a new moon occurs, it really gets us moving, because the new moon is an initiation of a 4-week cycle, and typically a 4-week cycle of action. Within 48 hours of a new moon, maybe a week, but I would say even within 48 hours, it isn't unusual for something to present itself even from the outside related to that part of the chart. And a new moon also gives us energy. So it isn't unusual for about 48, 72 hours before a new moon to feel exhausted, depleted, tired, flat, depressed. And the new moon occurs and our energy returns, and we start a 4-week cycle. So all of that holds true for this particular new moon. This particular new moon in Capricorn is especially relevant this year because this is the first time we're having lunations in the sign of Capricorn since the middle of July 2018 that a lunation is not an eclipse. So the eclipses in Capricorn and indeed Cancer, you have eclipses in opposing signs, are now behind us. And we have a set of lunations and a solar entry and a Venus entry and a Capricorn entry that as I mentioned in my Venus and Capricorn video, are attempting to normalize and reinvigorate a sign that has been under a set of pretty intensely transformative transits. Some could even say devastating transits. Specifically, we've had the eclipses of release or letting go, in this part of the chart since the middle of July 2018. Saturn was in this part of the chart in the sign of Capricorn since December the 20th, 2017. Jupiter was in the sign of Capricorn starting November, December of 2019. Saturn and Jupiter left in December of 2020. They're both in Aquarius. My last video was on Aquarius and the so-called Age of Aquarius, so-called. And what we're left with in terms of these kind of heavy-hitting transits, of course, is the one transit that has been in this sign since 2008 and is there till 2023, is the most heavy and intense transit of all, which is Pluto, the planet of death and destruction and transformation. And more accurately, I would, Hades, death and transformation, the god of the underworld. This new moon, at about 23 degrees of Capricorn, is conjunct Pluto. They're off by about a degree. And so far, the eclipses of release have had their day in Capricorn. Jupiter has had his day in Capricorn. Saturn has had his days in Capricorn. The Sun and Mercury and Venus are here trying to reinvigorate this part of the chart, burn off what is needed to be released, let it go, and create a new greening, new opportunities, a new set of habits, a new set of patterns. Very much with this kind of sense of what happens when a forest fire goes through a part of a stretch of land or a forest and the greening appears. And that's what the Venus and Capricorn video, in a certain sense, is about. But as I've mentioned to you in my full moon in Cancer video that I did when the full moon in Cancer occurred December the 30th, and indeed these Capricorn videos, is that these lunations are also extending this Cancer-Capricorn activity, eclipse activity, the old activity at this point in time till the middle of February. And specifically, if you were to say, why did you say the middle of February? I would have said because there's a new moon in Capricorn later today that inaugurates a 4-week cycle till February the 11th, when the sign of Capricorn remains important and active. And right now, as I've told you, there's a lot going on. The sign of Scorpio is still active till about February 8th. Sagittarius is active because we're in an eclipse cycle of Sagittarius till May the 26th. Capricorn is active. We have a new moon. Aquarius is very active. Taurus is active. Lots going on. And we can feel it. We can sense it. And as I mentioned to you in a video I did at the end of December around sort of the current energy of the time, it's very much about trying to burn off the old by the middle of February so that we can embrace the new. And a new moon conjunct Pluto, I finally figured out how I'm going to title this video, but I really struggled with it. Words such as, and these all apply, violence and revolution and terror and it's now or never, or death and transformation, rags to riches, riches to rags. Pluto is a planet of transformation. Pluto has an innate ability to go into a part of the chart to determine what is truly not in your life path and gradually start to remove it. Resistance to what Pluto's trying to do is always intense. We're talking, sometimes Pluto is referred to as kind of a terrorist planet because there's no reason. With Pluto, I'm reminded of course, the Tower card, which some would argue is Pluto, but many would argue is Uranus, which we'll talk about as this video continues, but certainly the Death card in Tarot. And with Pluto, it's very much, in the Rider-Waite Death card, you have Death on his horse riding towards a group of people, and whether you're a child, male, female, a pauper, or even indeed the Hierophant, the guru, the sage, the pope, everyone has to bow down to this all-powerful figure. You can negotiate, you see people reasoning, but you see ultimately people surrendering. And with Pluto, the change or the transformation can't really be negotiated with or worked with. It has to be accepted, it has to be surrendered to. One particular astrologer referred to Pluto's transit as burn down the barn so you can see the moon. And this kind of, like a plow, just kind of raking up and taking with it what it needs to take, and you cannot stop, much like the power of death. If you've ever lost a loved one or a loved animal or dealt with the force of death or transformation that just feels complete and final, it's just like something is just wrested from you. With Pluto, it's a slow-moving transit, so it's a longer transformation, and wherever Capricorn sits in your chart has been subject to this transformation. And indeed, after the new moon happens and the Sun passes on to Aquarius and Venus passes on to Aquarius, we're left with Pluto and Capricorn to finish up what needs to be finished up till 2023. And this new moon conjunct Pluto has to be looked at, we can't help but look at it as a final blow, to whatever it is that needs to be released and let go of. A death, a transformation, a loss, violence, a loss of status or a gain of status, terror. And certainly when we look at things like violence, we look to planets like Mars and Pluto. When we look at issues related to power struggles, being trapped in things, exercising power, murky codependencies in relationships, whatever the nature of the relationship, we look at a planet like Pluto to give us a sense of where does someone give up their power, where do they gain power, where do they exercise power over others. For all intents and purposes, it's a nasty planet, but if you take life as an adventure, it's also a very exciting planet. It is always a wrenching planet. And with a new moon conjunct Pluto, if there's some part of the foundation that is still weak and that has not been burned down since the end of December 2017, in whatever part of the chart Capricorn occupies, it is going to get burned down now. It is going to get brought down. It's like the last of a shaky foundation of a burned out building that is still standing, and Pluto just comes in and says, this has no legs. This is going. We're taking it. We're taking everything. We're taking the ashes. We're taking everything. So that finally this greening that Venus is also trying to introduce can happen. Now, it's hard not to think about where we are at currently, socially and politically. And so, new moon conjunct Pluto, and the words that came to my mind in terms of terror, violence, change, death, and transformation. I'm going to just leave it at that, and I'm going to let the next change of status, burning down the barn so you can see the moon. The sign of Capricorn is associated with the most traditional and hierarchical, currently patriarchal power structures and rules of the game. And whether you look at something like the Me Too movement, or whether you look at other, how we define the rules of the game and how we define success and who has power has been going through a steady transformation since 2008, accelerated by Saturn and Jupiter and the eclipses of release. And the new moon conjunct Pluto may indeed, at least for now, sort of provide another sort of death knell or a blow. A planetary transit never completely transforms something forever. We always come back to patterns to kind of move out of them. But it's a set of blows. It's a set of transformation to this sign and the energy that it carries. How do I build my resume? What does it mean to be successful? How do I create success for myself? What does status look like? What are my goals? How do I achieve? How do I reach the top? Career. A certain cold and calculated and self-centered achievement, and sort of getting the A+ on your report card. And depending on how you were brought up and what culture you were brought up in, sometimes you're brought up to believe that that is your sole purpose in life. What is the title? What is on your business card? And if you are particularly male in these kinds of societies, these archetypes, it's very interesting. Capricorn is a feminine sign, and so you are dealt with this idea of what does it mean to be successful in a masculine way, but who is judging and through what lens is it being looked at? Who is it being looked at to protect? What is it being looked at to satisfy? So all of this is up for, and has been up for, a certain amount of debate and discussion and rigor and release. And with the new moon conjunct Pluto, I would be very curious to see what it is in the next 4 weeks bring. Pluto also will rule things like investigations on some level, or what is going on beneath the surface. But terror, death, transformation, status changes, a part of the equation. Now, the new moon is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Aquarius, a sign it co-rules with Uranus. So Saturn is already strong. And the new moon in Pluto, if you look at my Age of Aquarius video I did, ruled by Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius now is very much about social change that makes rational sense. And Aquarius is not a soft sign. Aquarius is an exacting sign, and Aquarius does not let things go. Aquarius will catch something by the tail and swing it around its head until it has exhausted, until it itself can be convinced of any opposing argument in the coldest and most rational of ways. There's nothing emotional about the sign of Aquarius. It's passionate, but it is utterly, exhaustingly, almost repulsively rational. There's a lot of misunderstanding associated with the sign of Aquarius. It's associated with technology, it is associated with science, it is associated with medicine, it is associated with experiments, it is associated with QED, it is associated with theorems, it is associated with the microscope. Everything goes under this microscope, and if it is true, and if it is provable, and if it makes it through the test, we give it a stamp of approval. Very, very rational, very scientific. And with Saturn in Aquarius, and very much about the group and the collective and society and social norms. So with Saturn in Aquarius, social agreements get tested. Aquarius is indeed a revolutionary sign, but not in the way that we typically associate it with. So this new moon conjunct Pluto in the traditional sign of Capricorn, in the repressive sign of Capricorn, in the highly disciplined and structured and achievement-oriented, currently patriarchal sign of Capricorn, is ruled by Saturn. That is, just as he did briefly between the middle of March 2020 and the end of June 2020 when people took to the streets. Saturn is now in Aquarius for 2021 and 2022. This, looking at issues related to social equality under a microscope, are ruling and governing this particular new moon. In addition, the other planet that rules Aquarius is Uranus, and Uranus is in Taurus and is squaring Saturn. Uranus is a planet of liberation, of sudden changes, but Uranus is also currently transiting through Taurus, a kind of a lazy and a slow and steady wins the race sign. Lazy is an interesting word for Taurus. Persistent. Taurus has its own rhythm, I think is a better way of putting it. And if Taurus has its own rhythm, and Uranus is all about, let's shake this up, quantum leaps of sudden change. And so Uranus and Taurus then would be ruled by Venus. Venus is in Capricorn. We're back to Saturn. Saturn, Uranus, Venus are having some sort of a conversation right now, and that conversation is very clear because at the time of this new moon, the transits that are sort of imprinted is that Venus in Capricorn is trining Uranus in Taurus. It's a supportive transit. And the primary transits that are occurring right now is that the Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius are squaring Mars and Uranus in Taurus. So you have Venus supporting Uranus in Taurus, just passed through its trine with Mars, and you've got Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius getting ready to square Mars and Uranus, which are coming together. It's a highly volatile set of aspects. A square means that there's going to be a lock of activity between the Taurian planets and the Aquarian planets, between a sign that preserves and a sign that is slow to change, and a sign that is all about rational change and equality. Saturn and Jupiter are exacting, and Uranus is equally exacting in the kind of sort of change that they want to create. Pluto's in the mix in Capricorn. Venus, intriguingly, this, you can look at the Venus trining Uranus in one of two ways. Either Uranian forces that are somewhat stymied by a certain kind of a slow, resistant tempo are getting supported by Venus in Capricorn, a more conservative communication, a conservative set of relationships, or else you can look at Venus in Capricorn trying to again create a certain greening and a new set of habits in Capricorn, very much in line with the new moon conjunct Pluto. Although Pluto is looking to destroy, Venus is looking to seed and to create at the same time. And so the trine from Venus to Uranus could also be a support in trying to get to these kinds of quantum leaps of changes. Uranus is very slow. It's very, very slow, getting ready to go direct in a few days' time. So Saturn and Jupiter square Uranus are really all about, and Mars conjunct Uranus, Mars-Pluto transits are what we would look for to really indicate violence, but you can't ignore a Mars-Uranus transit. Here's the deal, as I mentioned to you yesterday. Mars and Uranus and Taurus, the only thing I will say for it is it's sort of a saving grace. I really like Uranus's energy as a planet. I like quantum leaps. I like to have my mind expanded. I like to gain insight into things that are confusing and not clear. I have my sun in Sagittarius. I like a certain amount of sort of constant expansion of knowledge and understanding of what is going on around us. And Uranus is a planet that loves to create that for us. I can only understand so much, and then all of a sudden you have this aha moment, Uranus, flash of lightning, and you are transformed into a higher level of consciousness. With Mars and Uranus, again, rags to riches, riches to rags. Mars and Uranus, very much the Tower card. Something gets struck with lightning. Mars is kind of a violent planet, and things can get toppled. The change can be, again, to an existing, preserved way of doing things that is slow and resistant to change. Now, when it comes to issues related to violence, the only thing is that Taurus is a very non-violent sign in terms of sudden violence. So I'm struck by the idea of, to some extent, and it's not like it wasn't without violence. There was plenty of violence in terms of what happened on January 6th, but there is this notion of you enter the Capitol and you start to take selfies, or you start to eat a sandwich, or you start to, the energy dissipates somewhere, and this kind of Taurus energy might be a help at least to contain the volatility of a Mars conjunct Uranus. But ultimately, Saturn square Uranus, which is the primary transit of 2021, is absolutely one of liberation, some of which is resisted, which it always is. And the resistance comes not so much from the planet of Uranus, but the sign that Uranus is transiting. As I've mentioned to you, it's so weird that Saturn, the conservative planet, is now in its own sign of Aquarius, questioning its own conservative values and conservatism ruthlessly. And only Saturn can do this. Saturn in Capricorn, this is the way it's going to be done. This is the way you're going to be successful. This is the way you're going to get an A+. You can't diverge from it. And Saturn in Aquarius is, who made the rules about this A+? This makes no sense. Why should we grade papers anyway? There should be a new way of doing things. And, let's find a completely revolutionary but rational. It needs to make sense. It needs to be studied. It needs to be tested. Let's get the right experts in the room. Let's really look at what testing should look like and how many different types of people are there and what kind of testing works for different people. Aquarian energy, the collective, the group, rational scientific ways of serving everyone, and demolishing the kind of controlling aspect of Capricorn. The new moon in conjunct Pluto furthers this demolishment, this transformation, this forest fire that has been in the sign of Capricorn, especially since December 2020. It is very much in line with what I have been talking about till the middle of February. We're still being asked to let go of the old and not resist and take the steps and actions we need to in order to finish up what needs to be finished up so that the new can be ushered in. And we see this play out socially, politically, as well as personally. On the personal front, which is largely what these videos are about, where does Capricorn sit in your chart? And what has it been trying? What are these transit's been trying to effect in that part of the chart. What lessons have been learned? What has been served up to you karmically with Saturn's presence in Capricorn in that part of the chart through December 2020? So now we have a new moon conjunct Pluto, and the last of the structures that have been burnt down get to be given a blow. And with Mars and with Saturn squaring Mars, I think tomorrow or day after, the 23rd, something like that. Mars squaring Saturn, Mars and Uranus coming together, Saturn squaring Uranus by the middle of February, Venus trining Uranus. Especially Mars conjuncting Uranus, because that's not going to happen again this year. That is a lightning strike. That is a lightning strike. And the new moon is tonight at 9 o'clock. So let's see what the next 48 to 72 hours bring, friends. And the next month-long cycle through February the 11th. If you have been dealing with or hosting Capricorn, Cancer, or especially Aquarius and Taurus in a relationship part of the sun, if your chart, I'm going to let you in a relationship part of your chart. Issues related to marriage and divorce, issues related to the importance of relationships and contracts and partnerships. With Mars and Venus trining just before this new moon and Venus supporting Uranus after this, somewhere relationship, and I'm talking also certainly giving romantic relationships sort of a pride of place in that. Financial relationships, a pride of place on a personal level, can be somehow involved in this equation of things breaking down, greening occurring, liberation, quantum leaps of growth that are being resisted but now have to do under Saturn's gaze and Jupiter's match lighting quality, inaugural quality, really kind of starting to take hold. And Donald Trump has Mars-Uranus in his career sector. The Mars-Uranus conjunction in his career sector. And the new moon is in his job, service, work, health sector. If you are hosting Capricorn, Aquarius, Taurus in a health part of the chart and you've been ignoring something, I wouldn't be surprised if the new moon conjunct Pluto, especially if Pluto in the first house, Capricorn in the first house, Capricorn in the sixth house, maybe Capricorn in the eighth house. Beware. Just if you have not been paying attention or you have some sort of issue, with a bang something could happen that forces you to, that removes the last of the things that Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto have been trying, the transformation they've been trying to achieve. And things like heart attacks and accidents, but from a health perspective, some sort of breakdown that really causes the change and transformation that Venus is trying to effect, in a sense, in this part of the chart after all the eclipses and the Jupiter and Saturn transits in Capricorn. Just watch out for that in the next 4 weeks. Take it easy. With that could be my advice, generally speaking, which is, it's two set of contradictory, I'm going to say it's the what and the how. End the old. It's now or never. Shit or get off the pot. All that applies. Whatever you feel needs to be done to end matters that have been lingering and transformations and changes that have had to occur and needed to occur, particularly where Capricorn sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that stands for. Make it happen over the next 4 weeks. Make it happen. And if it's related to even Cancerian activities and where Cancer sits in your chart and the themes that have been prominent since the end of 2017, middle of 2018, make it happen. Turn that page so that you can move into the new. At the same time, that would be the what. The how, I would say, take it easy, because there's plenty that's going to go on with this new moon conjunct Pluto that is going to have a kind of a transformative quality that has the potential to take our breath away. So some people could deal with it personally, and you may be impacted by it because they're dealing with it personally. Signs of mortality, intimations of mortality, all of that could be somehow active. Health, changes in financial status, changes in power, changes in relationships, things that have been long lingering. And again, the planets will gauge for each of us whether we're with the program, not with the program, how much we're with the program or not. And Pluto, the new moon conjunct Pluto, will go ahead and take down whatever it feels it needs to take down in order to create the screening that Venus in Capricorn, and indeed this new moon in Capricorn, are trying to create after all the eclipses and Saturn and Jupiter's transits have occurred. And Pluto is now finishing up its transits by 2023. So Pluto is also intent on finishing up this transformation. It is going to transform this part of your chart. It is going to transform this part of your chart. All right. I think I got through it. I'm glad I did this today. Feel free to share this video if you found it useful, like it, comment on it. Likes and comments seem to give it more circulation on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel, please, if you haven't already, and click the bell icon if you're interested in doing so, to be notified whenever I do new videos. You'll be notified however you choose to do so in YouTube. My email address is in the description box once I'm done processing this video, and you can reach out to me there to inquire about rates for readings or rates for creating an easy-to-read version of your chart that will tell you which sign is in which house and what house that stands for. Do not send me your personal information until I give you my rate information, so you can really be clear that you want to work with me using those rates before you share anything related to your birth date or time or location, stuff like that. All right. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's finish up the old. Let's finish up the redundant. Let's finish up the decaying so that the greening can occur and we can welcome in the new. Enough is enough. All right. Oh, one more interesting thing. I had named my last video, "Do you hear the people sing?" or something like that, the Aquarius video. And then I saw a video, which I don't recommend you watch, with the January 6th gang of people sort of beating someone. And my video was so not about that. But I just did not like the title of that video in the context of "Do you hear the people sing?" and people storming something, because the kind of "Do you hear the people sing" that I'm associating, and I'm clear about what Saturn in Aquarius is about, is the very opposite of that preservation of what is false and paranoid. So it just didn't sit right. "Do you hear the people sing" just felt disrespectful to the destruction that had occurred. So I just changed it to the Age of Aquarius in quotation marks, because for me, putting Age of Aquarius in quotation marks makes a lot of sense, because I don't